December 12th, 2014. A young teenage boy got off the school bus and decided to wander around the woods surrounding his home when he made a truly horrific discovery. He found a woman's severed head with her eyes closed and mouth open. Obviously, they called the police and they brought cadaver dogs to the area, hoping to find the rest of this woman's body. But unfortunately, the dogs did not find anything. But that's not the weirdest part. Once they got to the morgue, they made an even more gruesome discovery. They opened the eyes and noticed that they had eye caps in there, which is a common tool that morticians use to keep the eyes closed after death, but it was what was underneath that was horrifying. 2 red rubber bouncy balls now sat in place where the eyes once were. Hey guys, welcome back to True Crime Mystery Wednesday. I'm Coco, and every Wednesday I sit down and talk about one real-life unsolved true crime. Now obviously today we're diving into this extremely bizarre case. This head was actually found about 10 yards off of a road in Economy, Pennsylvania. The road was called Mason Road. Now what was really odd about this is this road was in a very rural area and very low traffic. It was really mainly used by the locals as a shortcut to get to and from Route 989. Another very odd thing about this is when they found the head, they decided that it was probably only left in the woods for about a week and up to 4 weeks originally. But then they discovered something else that was very odd about this head, and that's the fact that it had been embalmed. So there's no telling how long it had been sitting on the side of the road. They could not age this person. They don't know who this person is. They don't know where this person is from. They just have these little pieces and clues to go on, and it's just such a bizarre case. They did determine that it was intentionally placed about 10 yards into the woods, meaning it couldn't have fallen off of a car that was driving through. And it also hadn't been touched by animals due to the embalming process. It made it very unappetizing to any animals in the area, and it didn't have any damage from any animals. So clearly an animal didn't take it from near the road and drag it into the woods. This woman was determined to be around 50 years old or older. Like I said, they couldn't actually determine how old she was specifically, but she did have short, whitish gray hair, and she had fully intact teeth, but the teeth had extensive dental work done, with some reports even saying that every single tooth had something done to it, and one tooth even had up to 7 separate procedures performed on this one tooth. Another odd thing about this, not odd, but it helps narrow down when she died, is one of the fillings, the compound that they used to fill the tooth, was a compound that was only made available and commercially ready in 2004. So that means she died sometime between 2004 and 2014 when the head was found. They also found that she had been taking some medication, lidocaine and atropine, which are actually medication that are used for acute heart diseases. So they believe that she died of possibly a cardiac arrest or something of that kind, but they obviously can't definitively say this. It's just a possibility since she was clearly on medication to help with a severe heart issue. Salt Lake City company Forensics Inc. was actually hired to do some testing on the isotopes in this person's body, hoping to determine where this person had lived. And this testing actually proved extremely useful. It showed that she had moved multiple times in the last few months of her life, and that possibly indicates that she was living with different family members or friends, possibly because of the heart condition. Also, I didn't read this, but I would kind of think that possibly she was getting treated for her heart condition. Maybe she was jumping doctors or trying to find different experts, hoping to find somebody who could help her with her disease, but that's not confirmed. I didn't read that anywhere. That's just something that popped into my head when I was doing research. In the last 7 months of her life, she was living in the, please pardon this pronunciation, I have no idea how you say it, Allegheny Mountain area? Allegheny? I'm so sorry. That's so embarrassing. But this area includes western and central Pennsylvania, New York, Lake Ontario, eastern Ohio, northern West Virginia and Maryland. She was kind of just in that area for the last 7 months of her life, and like I said earlier, she had been moving around frequently. Now back to the rubber bouncy ball situation. They were actually manufactured in China, and one of the detectives on the case actually was able to get a very, very similar red bouncy ball from a toy machine, one of those where you put a couple quarters in and twist and it comes out. Investigators even went as far as to contact the Chinese embassy, hoping that they would be able to narrow down the production of these rubber balls and find out where possibly they could have been bought in the area. Now in this next area, there were a few conflicting reports, which I feel like I find on every single case as of late. But some cases said that the embalming process completely destroyed the DNA. They were not able to extract anything from it or anything useful. Some other reports state that they were able to extract some DNA from the body, and they were able to input this into the FBI's missing persons list or program, hoping to match it to a missing person. I'm not sure which is true. I would assume that they were able to extract some DNA, whether it be from a hair root or a tooth like root or something. You would think that those wouldn't be affected by the embalming process. I'm not sure how embalming works and how it affects the DNA, but I do know that there should be a few places where you should be able to get some intact DNA, if not fully intact, at least somewhat intact, to help narrow it down. Police and investigators ended up contacting medical schools, funeral homes, anyone in the area, trying to reach out and find out if they had a body that was missing a head. Nobody responded back that they had heard of that. Nobody claimed it. Obviously, this is still an unsolved case. Another interesting fact that they found about the head is that it appeared to have been severed very professionally. Professor Michelle Vitale actually stated, quote, "When we lifted the flap at the back of the neck, we could see the whole purpose of that was to access a key joint that would preserve both the head and the vertebral column. This is not anybody going with a kitchen knife or anything remotely like that. It was well done and it was placed perfectly. She was dismembered professionally." And even Cyril Recht? I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing everything in this video. This person is a pathologist that has over 20,000 autopsies to his name, and he even stated, quote, "We see a rather neat surgical dissection. Somebody took their time." So this is not an amateur that we're dealing with. This is not somebody that just murdered a body and was playing around with it and embalmed it and did all of these things. It was very professionally and intentionally done. Now obviously this leads us into the theories section of what possibly could have happened to this poor woman. There were some initial speculations about if she was just a part of an organ donor program and they just took her eyes out because of that. But in recent years, when you're a part of an organ donation program, they don't have to take your entire eyeball out of its socket. That's just not a thing that happens. The only thing that they can really use from the eyeball is the cornea itself, that very front clear cap that is in front of your iris, the colored part of your eye. They'll just take that for uses and transplants for people that have corneal issues. They will not remove the entire eyeball. And even if they did, for some reason, remove the entire eyeball, they would never use rubber balls that were manufactured in China to put in there. That's just unheard of. That's not a thing that happens unless this mortician was just, hi chief, coming back in. Unless this mortician was just very unprofessional and, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a word. Oh no. I mean, I'm thinking malpractice, but not malpractice. You know what I mean. Just not doing things correctly. I'm so sorry. I'm struggling in this video. I don't know what's going on. I do know what's going on. It's just me. This is average. Let's be real. Also, like I said, with the dissection of the head being so meticulous and surgically sought out and just very professional, and the fact that there were eye caps, which are a common mortician tool that they use to keep the eyes closed, it is some kind of a professional. There were theories that it was a body broker, which when I learned about body brokers because of this case, kind of shocked me. Apparently, that's a thing. There are body brokers that will collect dead bodies and sell them for profit, or sell them to science, or sell them, just random places. That was bizarre to me in its own right. I did not know that that was a thing. I didn't know that that was legal. But just because body brokers are legal doesn't mean that they don't break the law sometimes. They do misuse and desecrate the bodies. There was one case of a body broker from the Detroit area that was actually just stacking heads on top of each other without any kind of protective barrier to separate the heads. 5 years ago, there was a body also missing its head that was found on the side of a road in Texas. And in this case, they ended up finding out that it was a body broker's body, and they had lost it. I shouldn't laugh, but I laughed when I read this. I felt so bad when I read it, but the person was driving this body to the body broker, and it fell out of the van, and the person did not realize that the body had fallen out of the van. I don't know how that happens when you're traveling with a body and it just falls out and you had no idea. I don't know how that happens. I should not laugh about it. It's not funny. It's kind of funny. I feel so bad for whoever that body was, though. There was even a case in 2010 where an airline employee discovered 40 severed heads in containers and one body without a head in a container that was being transported by airline. I couldn't imagine being that poor airline employee. That must have been scarring. But there have been thousands of investigations by police that have been tied to body brokers just since 2004. I guess they just have zero empathy for the bodies of these people and the families of the people that they're transporting. That's just awful. I mean, misusing and mistreating these bodies in the way that they are. It's just really sad that some bodies end up in this situation. Another theory is that it was possibly a murder, but like I said, it's not ruled out, but it's not the most obvious choice, because this person would have to have extensive knowledge on dissection, the human body, embalming. They would have to have access to the eye caps that morticians do. It would just be extremely unlikely that somebody just murdered somebody and did this. That's why this person's most likely not on any kind of missing persons list, and that just makes this that much harder to find out who she was, because she's not going to be on any kind of list. Most likely she died of natural causes, was shipped off somewhere. Now, another theory is that she was part of the black market organ trade, unfortunately. Obviously, that's a very lucrative field to be in, I guess is a way to say it. Black market trades and sales are very common. I don't think they're as common as people think they are, but it is a possibility. Police did mostly rule out grave robbing. Most likely this wasn't just someone who went and dug out a dead body that was already embalmed and then just started playing around with it. That's extremely unlikely, and they haven't found any evidence of any grave robbing anywhere in that general area. The last theory that I'm going to talk about is the most heart-wrenching possibility, where it could be just the work of a very bad funeral home. There have been many reports of funeral homes and morticians and everything just not doing the job that they're supposed to be doing. Unfortunately, a lot of body brokers also work out of mortuaries and places that are supposed to be burying and cremating your loved ones. There was a story in just 2018 where a funeral home in Colorado was discovered to be also part of a body brokerage business, and unfortunately that was legal. I hope that they are taking steps to make that illegal, where you can't be a body broker and manage a funeral home at the same time, because this is unfortunately what happens. This funeral home was taking people's loved ones and selling them and giving them fake ashes. In one case, a person got cement, like cement powder before you mix it to make cement. it wasn't the ashes of a loved one. Another one, a friend was informed that her friend was unfortunately sold and even out the door before she even got to the funeral home the next day to discuss what she wanted to do with the body. It was a horrible, horrible, tragic thing. I couldn't imagine being one of those family members where finding out that your loved one was sold without your knowledge, without your consent, and you paid all this money for a funeral or a cremation. That's just completely awful. In one case, there was a man and his wife had passed away, and he wanted to be scattered with her in the end. He wanted both of them to be cremated, and then their kids would scatter them together, which is a very, very common thing. It's what I think that my dad wants. And unfortunately, he was informed that his wife was one of the people that was sold, and his cremains were not of his wife. And now he has to live with that, knowing that his wife's body is somewhere, he does not know where, and it could be being misused, or he has no idea where it is, and he'll never be able to be scattered with his loved one. It's just a terrible, terrible thing. And unfortunately, this happens, and we don't know how often it's happening. And I do think that that's possibly what happened here. Thankfully, once you pass away, it's just an empty shell. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a physical thing that you can have to remember your loved one, but they're no longer in that body. They are not those ashes. They are not the remains in the ground at the cemetery. That's not where they are. So if that gives anybody any kind of closure, but I know that I would still be absolutely mortified if I found out that that had happened to, like, my mom. If I found out that the remains that were in my home were not my mom's remains, I couldn't even imagine how I would react to that. So my heart goes out to all those families that have been affected by anything like this. So I hope you enjoyed this True Crime Mystery Wednesday. I know it was a little bit different from what I normally do, a little bit odd, and it had almost no information to work off of, but I did my best, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again next week for another True Crime Mystery Wednesday. See you then.